So back in 2014, I bought a 1971 Buick Skylark in upstate New York. As you can see, it had some weird features like door poppers, and it was all matte black with exterior house paint. So the car wasn't great. It was pretty cheap, but it was the straightest muscle car that I could find in upstate New York at the time because everything rusts away. So this is just a bit of an overview of the car. It came with some bits and pieces of spares. It also had a Buick 350, which is different enough from a Chevy 350 to not have any real aftermarket performance parts, so that was great. The guy had done some little mods like, you know, carburetor and intake, some HID lights, a crappy exhaust, things like that. So I bought the car while I was at a summer camp, and as you can hear here, it doesn't really sound super nice. So over the trip we decided to try and modify it a little bit to get it to run a little better. I think it got about 8 miles to the gallon when I first got it. I think the best we got was about 15 miles to the gallon. So my idea was, before I left camp, to tidy it up and do a few bits and pieces to it, but it didn't pan out that way. So I finally got it registered and on the road, and the very first drive I took it on, the throttle cable snapped and I got pulled over by the police, which was great. So there was quite a bird's nest of wires in different spots in the car, trying to fix those. I got into a car crash in Harlem, as you can see here. That was interesting. And then we got to the airport to pick up my friend to do the road trip, and the starter motor immediately snapped to pieces. We managed to get a new one, took us 2 days. Then we had to rewire the car in my boss's driveway. That took us a week because we were trying to fault find a problem, and then just gave up and rewired everything. Once we got all that done, we accidentally melted a wiring harness in the dash. That was awesome. As you can see here, all the fusible links blew because I pinched a wire when I put the steering wheel back in. Anyway, once we got that sorted, we made a key out of a bunch of wires and just hot wired the car. You can see here we melted one of them accidentally. Again, the car sounds terrible, but this is the best we had it. Well, once we got on the road, this is sort of what it sounded like. So we left New York City and headed south to North Carolina, and we stayed with a friend of ours named Leo. So he lived at like university accommodation, and we were just sleeping on his floor. We tried to service the car as best we could in his car park. It kind of went okay. Some new leads, distributor cap, rotor button, an oil change and filter. We put a ratchet shifter in it to get rid of the column shift. That was interesting. Once we got all that done, we ended up trying to drive the car, and as you can hear in this clip, it ran absolutely terribly after we put it all back together. So we weren't 100% sure as to why, and we actually spent quite a bit of time in this car park driving back and forth trying to sort of get it running right. We found some interesting problems, like the brake master cylinder had an enormous vacuum leak. It was monstrous. So we fixed that with a bit of cardboard and some tape, which was quite fun. There were just a bunch of little issues that we managed to chase down based on this problem, because we were misdiagnosing it and speaking to our friends in Australia who knew a little more about tuning carburetors and old V8s than we did. But in the end, it was just our mistake where we got cylinder 6 and 8 around the wrong way. So it was actually my friend on the trip, Cashew, who figured it out. We actually got kicked out of this car park by the police, and so we like hit the road, and we were just gonna have to limp the car, and it barely ran and kept backfiring and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, we ended up under a bridge with a homeless guy fixing the spark plug leads. Anyway, we made it to Florida, and then we blew a tire one day. That was a whole ordeal. Did some more service items, rotor button and dizzy cap, and you can hear in this video the car's running a little bit nicer now. It really comes into its own once we're sort of in Florida. Then we started having some issues. We drove down to Key West. That was fun, and saw this guy who trained cats. He was quite an eccentric person.
There is nothing. I could have been a real politician. There is nothing. Ah! There is nothing. Ah!
Very interesting man. Quite a good performance though. He really did manage to train his cats quite well. So that was an eye-opener. Once we left down at Key West, we went back up to Daytona Beach and stayed with some friends in their amazing condo. We got a new exhaust put on the car. It was running absolutely terribly, and we couldn't quite figure out why. We did find out in the end, but it cost us quite a bit of money because we broke down a lot. But the new exhaust did sound a lot better than the old one, so that was a bonus. We probably hung out in Florida for maybe 3 weeks while we tried to iron out pieces on the car. We actually re-registered it in Florida with the help of a friend of ours who lived down there, and Yeah, it was my mistake. We were waiting for a title for quite a long time. It was actually the full 3 weeks. Trying to get the title was extremely hard, and then we waited for quite a long time for it to arrive. And when it actually arrived, I realized I already had the title. I didn't know what it looked like, and so I had a piece of paper that was the title. So now I have 2 titles for the car, which I imagine is not a very common thing. So anyway, this is the first sort of pull with the new exhaust.
New exhaust, bruh.
So as I'm sure you can hear, it sounds a lot better, but it's not great by any means. Just a crappy old 350 Buick. So we ended up driving up to Atlanta, had a bit of an ice spill. Pretty nice roads up there. We went to stay in some random crack hole, and then the nut on the what's it called? The nut on the diff pinion fell off in the middle of a 6-lane highway coming into Louisiana on like a Saturday afternoon. And so this is the result that we had. It was exceptionally fun. As you can see, some photos from the what happened. But I think that was the nut in the middle of the highway there. But all in all, it turned out fine, and we made it back to Florida in the end, and did a little bit of maintenance on the car. So
we found the problem. We got sticky valves. So watch closely. So tap this valve down, and then it slowly comes back up.
So I have no idea if this was actually a thing or not, but it made sense in our heads.
So you can see this valve's covered in black, whereas these ones aren't. It's because the valve's not seating when the explosion is happening in the engine, and then it's pushing past the valve stem seal and caking the oil, or burning the oil onto the valve and the spring and the seat and everything. So that's problem 1. Let's see if we've got some others.
So then we put the wing on, got a new registration, and packed up. Oh, that's right, before we could leave, this is like the day we were supposed to leave, we pulled the carburetor apart because the car was running terribly, and we thought we had a bad tank of gas that went through it, and so we pulled the carburetor down. There was a lot of ethanol deposits in it. We tried a lot of different things to try and figure out what was going on. We actually ended up buying a new carburetor, a quick fuel technology carburetor from a speed shop in like northern Daytona Beach. And yeah, the shop was actually really awesome. Guys there were super helpful and nice. Got a sweet t-shirt out of them, and there was a weird truck out front. Also got a spare accelerator pump for this Edelbrock carburetor, which lasted like, it was honestly like 4 blocks, and I snapped it in half because I installed it incorrectly. So that was a waste of time. Put the old one back in the end. That's the old one there. You see the new one in it, and that was the shop. So then we ended up on the side of the highway near a town called Live Oak, where the car broke down and we didn't know why. And then we put a new, the starter motor again broke. And then this was a workshop that we got towed to at like 3 in the morning. We're in this town for like 4 days, and it cost us almost $1,000 trying to figure this out. It was ridiculous. What it turned out to be was we actually found the only old guy in town that worked at a workshop that knew anything about carbureted cars, so he was really helpful. And it turns out the condenser on the distributor had failed, so it was a $10 part that cost us like 5 days and $1,000. And at this point we were just trying to get the hell out of Florida, and we just could not manage to do it. And yeah, I'll never forget that problem, and I'll never forget that the $10 solution, that we actually had a spare one in our car the entire time. But this guy was super nice and helped us, and even let us just do the work on the car while he sort of diagnosed things and was like, yeah, you need to change this. So we'd spend half an hour to do it. Let us borrow his truck to get out of the parts store. He's a really, really nice guy. So that was super helpful. In a little sleepy town of Live Oak. So once we finished that, we finally got the hell out of Florida. We also had our tools rained on. That was great.
Yay! We finally left fucking Florida! Yes, finally! Yeah, that's it.
We were ecstatic for that. It took us so long. Once we were finally free, we actually met a guy named Sean that I'm still good friends with in College Station, Texas. That was a car show that he took us to. Then we ended up continuing north to Colorado. So this is some of the drive that we took up through north of Texas and then up into Colorado. Once we made it up into Colorado, we then tried to climb Pikes Peak, because obviously that's the main sort of, well, actually it was the main road that Adam wanted to drive. So we went to Pikes Peak. This is the day that we went up there. There's the road, and we're driving on it, and it's quite rainy. You can't see any of the mountain. It was probably the worst day we could have picked for it, unfortunately. And as it was, God, August, almost September, August, yeah, something like that. We ended up climbing the mountain to the start point of the Pikes Peak Rally, and we got to see the gift store and all that sort of stuff. And then as we were paying to like go up on the road, so this is sort of the start, there was a ranger there who said, you know, it's really bad up there, but I'll take you a little way because you've already paid. So we got to go driving up it a little bit, and it started snowing on us, and then we tried to do a burnout in the wet on a hill. It was essentially in the snow, and our piece of crap car couldn't even manage that. So that was a little bit disappointing, but we still got to drive on Pikes Peak and get snowed on, so that was fun. Then we went to the Grand Canyon. That was pretty interesting. We got valeted in Vegas, and then this is us heading towards LA, I believe. So Vegas was interesting. It was expensive, but it was an interesting little stopover. And then the drive from Vegas to LA was a long one. So this was sort of at the month-and-a-half mark, and we ended up staying in LA for a little while. And bashing exhausts off, we went and saw Mulholland Highway. It was pretty cool. And then we went to a movie premiere for a movie called On Any Sunday, and then that was the end of it. We ended up putting our Buick on the trailer and sending it back to New York. We realized then that our suspension was ruined, but it's just the way it was.
Done yet? Right up, guys, don't fuck off too fast.